Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamana.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamana.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Bhuyo mamanti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Bhuyo mamanti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Yat kalpatam achirato britayor vivashaha.
Yat kalpatam achirato britayor vivashaha.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamana.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamana.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Bhuyo mamanti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Bhuyo mananti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Yat kalpatam achirato britayo vivashaha.
Yat kalpatam achirato britayo vivashaha.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamano.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamano.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Bhuyo mamanti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Bhuyo mamanti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Yat kalpatam acharato britayor vivashaha.
Yat kalpatam achirato britayo vivashaha.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamano.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamana.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha.
Bhuyo mananti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Bhuyo mamanti kamitam tadanugraho me.
Yat kalpitam achirato britayor vivashaha.
Yat kalpitam achirato britayo vivashaha.
Ladies, please.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamano.
Tanme swabharto avashaya malakshamano. Yushmad vyati kramagatim pratipadya sadhyaha. Bhuyo mananti kamitam tadanugraho me. Yat kalpatam achirato britayo vivashaha.
So word for word translation. Tat.
Tat.
Therefore.
Therefore.
Me.
Me.
My.
My.
Swabhartuhu.
Swabhartuhu.
Of their master.
Of their master.
Avashayam.
Avashayam.
The intention.
intention,
alakshamano,
Lakshamano,
not knowing,
not knowing,
yushmat,
Yushmat,
against you,
against you,
vyatikrama,
Yatikrama,
offense,
offense,
gatim,
Gatim,
result,
result,
pratipadya,
Pratipadya,
reaping,
reaping,
sadyaha,
Sadhya,
immediately,
immediately,
bhuyaha,
Bhuyaha,
again,
again,
mama antikam,
Mama Antikam,
near me,
near me,
itam,
Itam,
obtain,
obtain,
tat, that,
that,
anugraha,
Anugraha,
a favor,
favor,
may,
may,
to me,
to me,
yat,
Yat,
which,
which,
kalpatam,
Kalpatam,
let it be arranged,
let it be arranged,
achirataha,
Achirata,
not long,
not long,
britayaho,
Britayaho,
of these two servants,
of these two servants,
vivashaha,
Vivasha,
exile.
exile.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Translation. These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. From this statement, we can understand how anxious the Lord is to get his servant back into Vaikuntha. This incident, therefore, proves that those who have once entered a Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. The case of Jay and Vijay is not a fall down. It is just an accident. The Lord is always anxious to get such devotees back again to the Vaikuntha planets as soon as possible. It is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees. But when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. The Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doormen's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible.
Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Om Agyanatidandasya Gyananandasya Chakshurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sakatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Gagatam Nitam Tam Sajivam Sadaitam Satam Vitam Harijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Sha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Raya Vrindaveshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pramani Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kriva Sindhuya Evasha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So verse again. Tan me swabharto avashayam alaksham Yushma Vyaktakama Gatim Patipadya Sadhyaha Bhuyo Mamantikam Ittam Taranugraho Me Yatkalpatam Achirato Britayor Vivashaha. These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. So, this, I guess, is everyone kind of familiar with this pastime? Anyone who's not familiar with this pastime of Jai and Vijay? It's okay to be honest. Better to be honest than not. Okay. So we'll just set the scene a little bit. So, this is, for me, this is actually for both of us, it's one of those kind of controversial pastimes, you know, because Jai and Vijay, they're gatekeepers to Vaikuntha, right? So they're guarding the door. And just on the other side of the door is entrance into Vaikuntha, where you get the personal darshan of the Supreme Lord. So it's quite an important service. And they're guarding the door to Vaikuntha, and along come 4 naked little baby boys, you know, like, and you're guarding the door to Vaikuntha, and some little kids show up with no clothes on, like, let us in. And they said, sorry guys, get some clothes, grow up a little bit, and then you can get inside. And I always thought it's kind of like a natural reaction. Like, I'm sure if 4 naked kids, even if 4 naked adults showed up outside of T. Krishna Kamri, you'd be like, okay guys, you know, nice to see you. Well, not really nice to see you, but we kind of restrict them a little bit. So I always thought Jai and Vijay didn't really, you know, come on. They did the right thing, you know. Naturally, they would not let these people in, but they didn't realize that the 4 Kumars were the 4 Kumars, and you know that they were extremely exalted persons. So unfortunately, what transpired after that was that, and which we'll discuss a little bit more later, is that the 4 Kumars were not very happy with the way that Jai and Vijay kind of dealt with them, and so they decided to curse them, which is of course what you do. You know, if someone doesn't like you, then you get your Brahmin thread out, wrap it 3 times, and you snap it and offer some nice benediction to them, right? So the Kumars cursed Jai and Vijay, and then of course Jai and Vijay and the 4 Kumars started kicking off a little bit, you know, and back and forth, oh no. And then Krishna shows up on the scene, or Vishnu shows up on the scene, and he begins to speak. And it's really amazing how he deals with the situation and the scenario, and that's really one of the points that we want to hone in on today. But he interacts so respectfully with the 4 Kumars, because he recognizes that they're Brahmins. And so he begins to extol the glories of the Brahmanas and speak about how worshipable they are. And actually the first thing that he does when he arrives is that he apologizes for the conduct of his 2 servants. And I won't get too much into it, but because we'll discuss that more in a minute. But the way he deals with them is so kind of wonderful. He treats the 4 Kumars with deep respect. He takes responsibility and ownership for what happened to by his servants. And then this verse comes up where you hear that Krishna or Vishnu is basically saying, no problem, curse them, allow them to experience that curse because they acted inappropriately. Their conduct wasn't befitting. But my request, please, let them come back as soon as possible. And this is really, really educational for all of us to see how the Lord interacts and deals with these kind of situations, because he's really setting the perfect example of how we should be aspiring to act. So these are some of the things. This is a basic aspect of the setting, but I encourage you to read at least these 2 chapters. We're in chapter 16, but chapter 15 is also, these 2 chapters are really, really powerful, and lots of wonderful purports like that. So that's more or less a setting of the scene for those of you who weren't aware, and a little bit of an improv rendition. So we're going to discuss what we consider the main topics of, we've got kind of 4 main topics that we wanted to discuss from this verse and purport, and we're going to use an acronym to do it, and that acronym is C.A.R.E. C.A.R.E. So each of those letters will then represent a specific topic that we'll discuss. And so, so the first one is C, and that stands for?
Community.
Community.
So this point of community, which just happens to be one of the topics we're going to try to speak on today also, because sometimes we can have devotees maybe thinking, surely arguments or conflict, I mean, maybe you don't have that here, I don't know, but we definitely have some experience of that. Maybe we caused it, I don't know, but
from time to time.
And it can be quite naive if we think, surely it's utopia, because I'm in the temple, or I come to, this, it must be just perfect. And sometimes you can be a bit disillusioned if you see that one doesn't talk to that one, or that one has some issues, that will always be there. And as Prabhupada says, the temples are like hospitals. We're coming to get better. We're not well. That's why we're in the material world. And there's an example of, I think it's like a rock tumbler. If you want to smooth out rocks, you put them in a tumbler, and they just like knot together constantly. But then they come out, smooth. And so that could be an example
Anyone
of
has an experience of maybe some sharp edges getting knocked off? We're not alone in this. It does happen. I mean, only rarely, like once in a day of Brahma in Wales. But from time to time, there's a little bit of this action going on. So like that.
Well, yeah. Yes, purified. So the point is that we shouldn't be surprised by those instances or occurrences. What we should be looking at is, and what Krishna is looking at, the spiritual masters are looking at, is how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the knocking? The knocking will be there. Any force, even if just coming in the room, we instantly have some maybe preconceived notion of, if you look like that, you must be like that. If I look like this, this person must be like this. So these things are all there, but how do I deal with these interactions? How do I deal with these tests? That's what's being looked at. That's what's being observed, as it were, by Krishna, and that's what we were going to unpack in this. Because do we hold the grudge? Do I continue with the service? I've been here for so long. I've tolerated this person for so long. Or do we actually just work through it? And because I want to move on, and I want to grow. I was to grow. So how are we dealing with the knocks? How do we deal with the conflicts or the arguments or the misunderstandings? And that will always be there, those issues in community, but how the community will thrive is how the wider community, which includes us, deals with those things.
Yeah, and basically in community, there's so many stories, realizations over the years, but my realization is that especially when there are personal disagreements, it's like 2 people come against each other like this, and both of them are pushing back and forth. And of course, everyone, this beautiful thing, everybody thinks that they are right. It's unbelievable. Sometimes I've sat in a room with devotees, and I just think, how can you possibly think you're right in this situation? And then they explain it, and it's like they feel completely and fully justified in whatever it is that they've done. But it seems like there's always this positioning against one another. And as long as both persons are fighting or pushing for the rightness to be right, then it perpetuates, it continues, until one person gets on the floor and says, Vanchakalpa, just whatever I did was stupid, the fact that somehow I've upset you, even if I think I'm right, even if I was right, I'm sorry that I upset you. And until one person, somebody decides to take the humble position, it will perpetuate. And even if you're not in the presence of each other, as soon as someone mentions that person's name, it's like a cat when a dog enters the room, right? Immediately, that's what they mean when they say you get your back up, right? So it's like you feel it inside you. It's not really resolved. So after some discussion and it goes back and forth, Jai and Vijay, they're the first ones to kind of accept the humble position. Of course, they weren't the ones who offered the curse. You could say that the four Kumars took it to an extreme. But Jai and Vijay, they say after that, after being cursed by the sages, the doorman said, "It is quite apt that you have punished us for neglecting to respect sages like you." It makes sense. No wonder, we offended you. You're great personalities and we upset you. But we pray that due to your compassion, at our repentance, because they're repenting here, right? This is also an important point. They're repenting. The illusion of forgetting the Supreme Personality of Godhead will not come upon us as we go progressively downward. Now, I didn't mention earlier, but the curse that they gave them was that they had to leave Vaikuntha because they said your behavior isn't befitting of Vaikuntha residence. So you don't belong in Vaikuntha. So therefore, we curse you to take birth in the material world. But they're saying, no problem, we'll go. But please have compassion on us because we're repenting, because we're apologizing, and make sure that while we're there, we don't forget Krishna. So they're really, really entering into this mood of remembrance of Krishna. So like that. And because of this mood, it's after that A. Remember the acronym? What was the acronym? So C stood for? And A stands for?
Appearance of the Lord.
The appearance of the
So
Lord.
the understanding here was that in terms of the naturally issues or interactions we may have that may not be so favourable, okay, they occur. You just can't get it. Even if just two people in the temple, they're going to occur. So to the extent that we are trying to be Krishna conscious or sincere, to that extent, the Lord will appear because we want to see His hand. To the extent that we're, to the degree that our own sadhana or our own practice is not so strong, or maybe on certain, like the external level, when I have an argument, it will be all over, and either I'll leave, or the other person will be made to leave, or basically my Krishna consciousness will really suffer. So initially, it's quite natural that if I have an upset, I might go away. I'll go to this side of the room, you go to that side of the room. Well, I'm going home, so I don't live here anyway, and I'll go home. But eventually, if I'm trying to be a devotee, I'll think about it, I feel really bad, and okay, Prabhupada Krishna, what did I have a part in this? Maybe I did. Maybe I'll think about it. Maybe I'll try to speak to a senior devotee. So the A meaning appearance of the Lord, because the Lord appeared because both sides were actually devotees in this Leela. So in the same way, to the degree that we're trying to be devotees and the other person is, we can resolve it quicker. It doesn't mean the important thing is we're not trying to absolve, you weren't right, you weren't wrong and you weren't wrong. Someone was maybe triggered it. We don't want to ignore that, and we don't want to say, oh, don't worry about it, just forget it, let it go. No, I was hurt. So that should be there, but done in a way that it's Krishna's in the center. And the mediation or the conversation that needs to take place will be so much more different than if it's just, leave Krishna out of it, we need to talk. Sometimes you see that with devotees when they try to bring up, what would Prabhupada do, or what, can you leave Prabhupada, I've heard it, can you leave Prabhupada out of it? Oh, hang on. We need to talk about it first. Oh, okay. So not like that. So somehow if we can, to the degree we want to really truly, I guess, sincerely devoted will solve it, will allow Krishna's hand and at least be like, okay, what was I supposed to learn out of that? Because we all have to learn something.
Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he used to, if devotees would come to him with a problem, maybe some of you know that, he would tell them to go away and chant 64 rounds and then come back. And we'll discuss the problem after you've chanted 64 rounds. Mostly, from what I've understood, nobody came back. And I was just hearing the other day how devotees, they would, before Srila Prabhupada would come to visit a temple, devotees would have so many problems and concerns and worries. But as soon as Srila Prabhupada showed up, it was as if they all just disappeared. It's like, Jai Prabhupada, he's here. What was I worried about, So it's amazing how sometimes, and also again, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada first met, and, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said that, the only shortage is a shortage of Krishna consciousness. And that's often the problem, that we're not allowing Krishna to appear and manifest in the situation. Because in this scenario, Krishna, his hand is all over the place because Krishna is accomplishing so many things with one action. And in this situation, as we know from the past time, the 4 Kumaras are Brahmavadis. They're still devotees, but they're impersonalist devotees. They're Brahmavadis. They're worshiping the impersonal form of the Lord. But they're still devotees because they're searching out the highest, cause of the absolute truth. They're still searching for that. So Krishna, he has a purpose in dealing with them. Jai and Vijay, we find out later that behind the scenes, right, Jai and Vijay had also neglected to allow Lakshmi Devi through the gates once. Now, because of that, if someone upsets my wife, I'm going to have to do something about it, So it's like Krishna, Vishnu, he's obliged. He has to do something about that. And of course, Jai and Vijay, they need to be rectified because their mentality isn't correct. So there's so many things that are going on behind the scenes here, and everyone can push blame. But once everyone accepts and puts Krishna in the center, which is also in community, the word community, if you break it down, means common unity. It means we all have something in common. And what do we all have in common is that Krishna is in the center of our lives. So even if there's some disagreement, then we have to keep Krishna in the center and really try to see, as my wife was saying, what does Krishna want for me in this situation? What am I meant to learn? How am I meant to grow from this? Because every obstacle or every opposition is an opportunity to grow and to learn. So like that. So by this mood, then Krishna appears. There's a couple of really nice verses that I'll just read quickly before we go to the R. The sages headed by Sanak Rishi saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who was formerly visible only within their hearts in ecstatic trance, and he had now actually become visible to their eyes. So this is quite a powerful moment, because before, it's just like when Narada Muni, and we hear in the Bhagavatam, so many sages and devotees, they're meditating and they're only experiencing the Lord within their heart. But now the Lord has manifest personally. He's come personally before them. This is a huge moment for the 4 Kumaras. This is a great step. I know at the moment I'm reading Shiva Maharaj's book, Sankalpa Kaumudi, which is, if anyone's read it or looked at it, very powerful about coming to this platform where we're actually having personal interaction with the Lord. So this is big for them. And then a description of the Lord is there. He was adorned with a girdle that shone brightly on the yellow cloth covering his large hips. And he wore a garland of fresh flowers, which was distinguished by humming bees. His lovely wrists were graced with bracelets, and he rested one of his hands on the shoulder of Garuda, his carrier, and twirled a lotus with the other hand. Such a beautiful description of the Lord, to meditate on Vishnu's appearance there. So now we come to the R. So we've got the acronym again. C stands for?
Community.
A stands for?
Experience the Lord.
And R stands for?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. Ooh.
Which sometimes we can think it lies with the other party or the other person, but truly, in order to move forward, and also to be sincere ourselves, we have to accept the saying, "It takes two to tango." There has to be some trigger. There has to be something that we may have knowingly or unknowingly done, knowingly or unknowingly. At least either way, if you take the responsibility, it really does heal the relationship and allow both parties to just move on. So, but that also means rectification, because sometimes there can be sentiment that, oh, it's okay, all right, don't allow it, it's okay, Prabhu, it's all right, just, it's okay, naturally. But does that really allow, is it devotee care? Because does it allow healing for the person that was affected by the behavior? If it's like, it's all right, we're just going to get the Prabhu to go and, I don't know, they go on Sankirtan, it's all right, they're all right. Something needs to be done so that care is seen to be shown both sides, as it were. So in the case of the JMBJ, you could say they were told, you've got to go, you've got to go down. It's like, oh my God, we've got to leave. But at least there's some acknowledgement that something was done. But at the same time, we have to be careful that we don't act in a way that label that person. So, oh, that JMBJ, they're the ones that stopped the 4 Kumaras, and then for like 3 millenniums and never forget that, as it were. Because I was thinking, even in society, if someone goes to prison, they do their time and then they get out and then they can get a job, get married, move on in the world, and you wouldn't even know in one sense, unless you wouldn't even know if someone's sitting next to you, if they say, yeah, I was in jail for 5 years. What? Then, but sometimes in the devotee environment or community, we can be a bit like, oh, that devotee, they sang so nice. Yeah, who is it? Oh, it's so and so Prabhu. Yeah, they had a fall down like with so and so's wife. Oh yeah, 7 years ago. Or yeah, they're the one that stole some. They stole some Maha sweet or something for like, and it just remains a label. So I was thinking, in terms of community and moving forward, that if someone's done something, yeah, rectify. I'm okay, but move on. And then we just, especially as devotees, we should be like, Hare Krishna, just not labeling them, not tagging them, as it were, on what may have occurred, as Lord Vishnu is doing, where he's like, okay, you guys, that wasn't very good what you did, you got to go down. But then he wants them to come back, and he creates that environment where they're also feeling, I want to come back, be able to walk through the door, be here, and not feel everyone's like, oh yeah, all right Prabhu, but they should be like, I'm home now. And so that's also very important in terms of taking responsibility, rectification, and allowing that environment where someone can feel, I can come back, and it's okay.
This word responsibility is another interesting word. If you break it apart, it means the ability to respond. So being responsible means that we actually learn how to be able to respond to a situation properly. I was with a devotee the other day who was explaining that Brahmanas don't just espouse philosophy. Real Brahmanas understand how to apply the philosophy according to time, place, and circumstance, and give the ruling, this is how we should do it now. And it may not always fit the bill of what we might be thinking, but that's what real Brahmins do. They don't just say, which is glorious, but at the same time, how do you apply that? Like we recently, we had some devotees pass away in the community, and we were discussing, how do you deal with that, because when you're dealing with loss, even though we know it's not, why mourn for that which is not worthy of mourning? But that's not what you want to say. At the time when someone has just suffered loss, it's just not really a mature thing. You can get to that, but people will definitely have to go through a space of dealing with difficulty. So responsibility is an important word. It means we have to be able to respond to a circumstance or a situation accordingly. And in this situation, the first thing, and we'll discuss this in a minute, the Vishnu did was he took responsibility. He said, actually, these two, they're my servants. That means it's my fault. He showed up and he said, it's my fault. He took full responsibility for the situation. After they cursed, You know, the four Kumars, Jai and Vijay, as we just read a little while ago, they also took responsibility. We messed up. We messed up. We stopped you, great sages, and we offended you, and we're sorry for that. So the only persons left to take responsibility and recognize that they had a part to play in it. Because, as my wife said, we all have a part to play. Even if we think we did everything right, that might be the problem. You always think you do everything right. Or maybe you do always do everything right. You know, so, but still, if the reaction or the result of that is disagreement and upset and discouragement, then something's not right. So at least I should take 100% responsibility for my 50% of the problem. Does that make sense? So like that. So after the Lord comes, he speaks, he reveals himself, then there's a verse from this section, and the four Kumars, they speak and they say, "O Lord, we pray that you let us be born in any hellish condition of life." This is the four Kumars. They're saying, let us be born in any hellish condition of life, just as long as our hearts and minds are always engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Our words are made beautiful by speaking of your activities, just as tulsi leaves are beautified when offered unto your lotus feet. And as long as our ears are always filled with the chanting of your transcendental qualities. So we see here that also the four Kumars became transformed. And actually at one point they said, we'll take the curse back. We messed up. We messed up too. And this is like the powerful, this is the building of community. Because if we want to build muscle, you have to have resistance. You can't build muscle without resistance. So even in community, there's going to be resistance. But let's see it as an opportunity to grow, to strengthen relationships, to put Krishna in the center, to see how we can work through it, rather than allowing it to be something that perpetuates and sits around like some trash that should have been thrown out a long time ago. You know, 20 years later, we're still like, something smells around here. Because you just hang on to it, you know. So, again, the acronym, C.A.R.E.
Expert leadership. So this expert leadership, in terms of the way Lord Vishnu behaved, the way he didn't come out and he didn't have his chakra, he wasn't going to chop anyone's head off, he wasn't going to send the Kumaras to...
He does do that sometimes, though.
Yeah, he didn't call social services on the boys or anything. So, but he dealt with it in a way that yes, it's acknowledgement, like I was saying before, you have to accept or take responsibility for what you did to the gatekeepers, but I want you back for your service. I want you back as soon as you can come back to resume your service. And how that must have made them feel like secure and sheltered, that if your authority was upset, or you did something, you were part of something that went wrong, and argument went on for too long, but at least if the environment, the leaders are creating in such a way that, yeah, this needs to be done. Maybe you need to step aside for a bit, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. But I want you, that place is still there for you, that shelter. Because in terms of as devotees, we tend to, our identity would be our service, or where do I fit in this structure? This is where I live, this is where I serve. So if that's taken away, it's very painful. So the environment was created that, no, when you come back, this is still waiting for you. And I want you to come back. And that's very expert, but at the same time, he did deal with it and he did pacify the other side. So he created that loving home community environment, as it were. That's right.
Nice. Yeah, so one thing is that when we say expert leadership, we might think, oh, the leader, it's their job, right? Whoever the leader might be. Having spent a few years in leadership service, the buck gets passed to you all the time, But the point is that, like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, and Srila Prabhupada also explained, that all of us should become gurus. Everyone should become guru. And that means as a guru, you are a teacher. And that means you are also a leader. And of course, what you say and what you do, there's a big thing also, prachar and achar. But, how we act, that's the way we teach the most. So we also, other devotees see it. And you only have to be around for a few months. And then when the new, guy or girl, joins, then they're looking at you to see what you do, and so therefore you're leading. Now, of course, our leadership, we understand that we're all in a long line and we're just following the person in front of us. This is the parampara system. We're all following someone. So we're all depending on whoever's in front of us. Who am I looking to? But we have to be careful that we don't just point the finger and expect the leader. Where's Vishnu? Why didn't he show up today? Or where is whoever? Tarkanath Guru or Gopal Roy Guru or Mother Mishrani or the GBC. Or, it's easy to blame. Right, we gave a talk the other day about the blame game. The magic finger comes out and it's everybody else's fault. Anyone has experience of that? I'm sure none of you do that, but you probably met other people that it's always somebody else's fault, But like Prabhupada said, when you point this finger, there's always 3 fingers pointing back at you. So, we have to... So expert leadership means that we also become leaders. But in this situation, Krishna and Vishnu, he was so expert, he showed up on the scene. First, he showed up on the scene. He was available. This is something that sometimes people complain about leaders. Where is the leader? Well, he's wherever. So Krishna made himself available. He mediated the scenario. He got involved. He heard. But when he first showed up, he also recognized that whatever's gone on here, these 2 servants of mine have upset these brahmanas, and they're my direct servants, so I have to take responsibility for that. So he took that. And he also accepted, as Mark was saying, for the rectification. So in so many ways he gave such a powerful example of how to be an expert leader. So we'll just read a couple of final passages from this section. At the end. So the Lord says, "To me, the Brahmana is the highest and most beloved personality. The disrespect the disrespect shown by my attendants has actually been displayed by me, because the doormen are my servitors." So he's taking responsibility. If they did this to you, then actually it wasn't them, it was me. I'm taking responsibility. I take this to be an offense by myself. This is very powerful. Therefore, I seek your forgiveness. The Lord is begging forgiveness from the 4 Kumars. On behalf of his servants, on behalf of his people who acted inappropriately. He's begging forgiveness from the 4 Kumars. Do you get how powerful that is? This is not the general attitude. What was it the other day? My wife was telling me Boris Johnson gave a talk and people were saying, what about the petrol crisis? What about things not being on the shelves? And he said, it's not my problem. It's like, Big Bojo, what is going on with you, man? Comb your hair, sort your life out, and sort out, coming down the road yesterday, it was like we couldn't stop at 2 petrol garages because the big sign said, no petrol. It's like, what is going on? It's like living in Nicaragua or something. I'm not, what's that show? Anyway, let's not talk about that. Therefore, I seek your forgiveness for the incident that has arisen. Then he carries on. He says, anyone in the entire world, even down to the Chandala, right? Chandala means the dog eater, who lives by cooking and eating the flesh of the dog, even that person is purified if he takes bath in hearing through the ear the glorification of my name, fame, etc. So Krishna is saying, even a Chandala, a dog eater, someone who cooks dogs and eats them, can be purified just by hearing the glory, my glories. Now you have realized, he's speaking to the Kumaras, you have realized me without doubt. Now he's referring to the fact that you've seen me, you've smelled the tulsi emanating from my lotus feet, and you've now become my bhakta. You're no longer Brahmavadis, now you're bhaktas. So he's saying, you've realized me without doubt. Therefore, because you've become my bhakta, bhaktosi me sakachati, right? Now you're my bhakta and my saka, so I will do anything for you. He says, I will not hesitate to lop off my own arm if its conduct is found to be hostile to you. I mean, this is really, really powerful. You know, the way that the Lord is dealing with the situation. And he's ready to even cut off his own arm if somehow his arm has been offensive to you. So what mood of humility we should have if, you know, we upset another devotee? The Lord here is ready to chop off his own arm for, you know, if it offends his devotee. So what to speak of if we upset a devotee? We should be like, who cares if I'm right or wrong? I'm so sorry that I upset you. Please forgive me. It should just become instantaneous in our lives. But it's a journey, right? Yes, so like that. Anything? Any concluding words? So that was it. So the acronym? C.A.R.E. Haribol. So it is 8:31. We went 1 minute over. So I don't know. Is there time for questions or reflections? Yes. Okay. I'll go call roll.
Thanks for class. I was wondering about because Lord Vishnu came and sort of mediated the argument, wasn't it? And so I was going to ask, I guess that's probably, is it often the case that someone neutral should come in and mediate the argument? And also, could anyone do it? Could, like, you're two brahmacharis have an argument and they just get a third person to be the mediator, or should it be someone a bit more sort of senior? And when would you need such a thing?
Nice question. Yeah, so mediation is definitely a powerful form of conflict resolution. So to have someone help, and of course it should be someone who is neutral. You know, if like I'm having a disagreement with someone and I ask my wife to mediate, if she doesn't help me, there's going to be a problem. And she's probably going to be prone, she's going to be biased. So, of course, it should be someone neutral.
Biased towards the other party.
That's right. I know what a jerk he is, right? I know how overbearing this guy can be. Johnny, Ty, sort your life out. Well, that's a different kind of thing. That's actually sometimes so there's mediation, but then there's another term, and I can't remember the term now, but where you have someone come in who's actually the authority. They're just the authority. You know, just like most court systems don't work on mediation. They work on the law, or judgment. So it's like, okay, what's your side? Okay, what's your side? Yeah, but that's not right. What you did was incorrect, so therefore, you're wrong. So then there's a kind of, so you have to rectify yourself and, like that. So sometimes that's also required. And more often than not, that's the way that things kind of work. But mediation is definitely an approach that can be taken. And I think in leadership we've seen over the years that it can have a profound and powerful impact. The mediator should be, it's best if they're trained. Because mediating isn't, and I keep not remembering the word for the other thing where you actually like present a judgment call. But mediation means that what you really do is assist the communication between these two sides. You get them so that they start to hear. Because what often happens is the hearing stops. You convince yourself I'm right, and you've got your story, and while the other person's talking, the only thing you're thinking about is all the arguments you're going to present against everything that they've said. Or usually, you give your case and the other person starts to talk and you're like, no, I didn't do that. It wasn't like that. And you just... So the mediator is like, no. Oh, hold on. Okay, you're going to go first and you're going to listen. And you know how we're going to know that you listen? Because you're going to empathically reflect back to this person what they said to you. You don't know what that means? I'll explain it to you. You're going to listen and you're going to speak in your own words exactly what they said. And you'll find that that's actually really powerful. Because most people aren't listening to anything except their own mind. So when you actually have to hear the other person, and I've seen, because I was also trained in mediation, and people, when they listen, and they have to listen because they have to repeat back what the other person has said, sometimes they'll find one little word that they said, and they'll go, oh, I didn't know that. And their whole demeanor changes. And then you see internally, they have to fight with themselves because they still want to be right, but now they know they weren't. And that's how, so mediation can be very, very powerful. But it's good if it's someone who's genuinely neutral, and it's also good if it's someone who is actually trained like that. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. Agitation. Is it agitation?
Arbitration.
Huh?
Arbitration.
Arbitration. I don't think that's... I think it's agitation. I think that's where you give judgment. I think that's the word. Please forgive me. English isn't my first language. I'm American, right? Yes, Mataji, please remind me of your name. Shamgori. Yes.
So, what happens in the case where the onlookers, so there are two devotees that have had something's gone on and it's torn that whole communication relationship. And then there's, the rest of the community. And, you were talking, Mataji was mentioning about labeling a person to that's the devotee that did X, Y, Z for the next, 10 years. So the onlookers, that creates a weird, it's just awkward for the rest of the community, for the other individuals. So what's the responsibility of the onlookers? Those that are not directly involved with anything to do with those two devotees. There's a tendency to choose sides or to just be weird and not talk to that particular individual. So, what's their responsibility if they have any at all?
Nice point. The difficult questions I give to my wife.
I think one thing that came to mind is that we would want to behave in a way that if it was me in the spotlight, how do I want other people to behave? Recently we have had many, but recently we had an incident where it was like that. Someone had a challenge, and it was interesting because it was juicy, I'll be honest. It was interesting. but
Plump mangoes. It was juicy.
So the parent of the person who the incident occurred, she made a very interesting comment. She said he can't even come back now, he doesn't feel because he's done his time, as it were, he's done whatever needs to be done, and he doesn't feel welcomed or isn't welcomed. And I was thinking, because it was like you have a cup and then you just keep pouring water and it just overflowed. The instant just everyone got covered by the
inundation
waves of nectar. So I guess for me it was like, and I have my own opinion of it as well, because all these people involved in that. But then I was thinking, but I want to be in a situation where I can still, like I said, come back through the door, be welcome. This is my home, ISKCON, that's all I've ever known in ISKCON and that. And so I guess the point is we should all take responsibility, because Krishna is not just looking at the people that were the incident, but how does everyone else react? How is everyone else behaving? And you're also getting judged, as it were. They may do their time, they may do what they need to do, and they've moved on. But if we're still gossiping or acting weird or being a bit then you're getting, Krishna's noticing that more. The others have just moved on. They've done what they needed. They got knocked together and they did what they had to do and moved on. So it should be a level of maturity and tactfulness and just behaving in a way that how I want to be treated, and hopefully how I want to be treated is nice, because maybe some people don't know how to be treated nice, so they think you just treat them horrible because I don't know anything else. But the level of maturity that we all play a part. If this is a community, then this is a family, and we all have a part to play for that person to be able to be still engaged, as it were.
And we're present. The thing is, at every single moment of our life, we're present in a situation, and different things happen to different people at different times. So if we happen to be in the community and we see this thing happen, we should also ask ourselves, how should I respond? What is the right, correct way to respond to this situation? And it's an individual thing also. And I'll give a pastime with Srila Prabhupada to explain that. How should I respond to this situation? And why was I there? I was meant to be at the supermarket. I just happened to be in the room when this thing happened. Why did I see it? Krishna, what are you trying to teach me from this? Right? So we always should be inquiring, how am I growing and learning from any situation that happens to me, good, bad, or indifferent? Right? We should be trying to get our life out of that and figuring out how we can grow. But the response, being responsible, being able to respond, will also not be the same for everyone. And I'll give this example, and then maybe we finish because we don't want to go too late. But there was an incident in New York City while Srila Prabhupada was on the planet. And sometimes devotees think, after Prabhupada left, it all went to pot. No, it was going to pot. Prabhupada was on the planet. And he was dealing with it as well. It was, he was trying to translate the Srimad Bhagavatam while traveling around the world, initiating disciples, doing so many things, and dealing with absolute madness. Because, creating a spiritual society in the material world is like, it's mad. It's a mad idea. But, so to do it, it's going to have its challenges. So in New York City, and there's much to the background, but I'll just give the simplicity. There were devotees who were offering on the altar to, as far as I'm aware, Radha Govinda, chicken. There a situation had occurred where they were offering chicken, and the devotees were like, hello. But because the persons who were doing it were, in a sense, senior in position, then some of the devotees felt, no, it's not our place to question this. It's not our place to get into it. We just need to continue with the service as best we can to Radha Govinda. Pray to them, please forgive this. We don't think it's right, but the seniors are saying to do it. Then there was another camp or group of devotees who were like, to heck with that. That's like nonsense. We need to pull the plug on this situation, and someone needs to tell Srila Prabhupada and da-da-da-da. So eventually they told Srila Prabhupada, and it came to Prabhupada's attention, and Prabhupada came in and he removed the people who were doing this, and he of course said, it's not correct. So, just in case anyone says later, Nitai came to Wales and told us it was okay to offer chicken to Gauri Nitai. I'm not saying that, okay? So no chicken biryani for lunch today. So Prabhupada said, no, that's not right. Then he wrote a letter, and he wrote a letter to both devotees, and he thanked both groups of devotees. He said, I thank you for continuing to make sure that the service to Radha Govinda went on and that you didn't leave. Because the devotees who disagreed, they left. They saw that was the right thing, to leave. I can't stand by and watch this happen, so I have to leave. But then he also thanked the devotees who raised the alarm and the flag and made sure that it got rectified. So it is not that one size fits all. It is very much an individual thing. And we will have our own instinctive dharma or nature. Some people are naturally fighters, If there's injustice, we must rectify it, There are people like that. And then there are people like, it's okay. Just chill out. Krishna will work it all out. And I'm like, what? So, and then there are people who are just like, Huh? What? Something's happening here? And then there are people who are like, can we make money out of it? Let's put it on the internet. This will boost my YouTube channel. You know? So there's all different types of people, right? So we have to see according to our nature, how do we respond to the thing? But we should try to respond accordingly. Yeah, does that answer the question? Okay, so I think we'll finish there. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.